Dr. Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the research ship New Horizon and watched the stars through the wide window. The ship had traveled for 6 months to reach this distant solar system called Kepler 442. The journey had been long, but Lisa knew it was important. This was humanity first, real chance to meet alien life forms, and maybe make friends with them. Lisa was 35 years old, and had spent most of her life studying biology. She had brown hair that she kept tied back, and green eyes that missed nothing. Her team respected her because she was smart and calm even when things got scary. The other crew members often came to her for advice when they faced problems. The New Horizon was not a big ship, but it had everything they needed for their mission. There were 20 people on board, including scientists, soldiers, and engineers. Lisa was the leader of the science team. Her job was to learn about any alien life they found and figure out how to talk to them. Captain Amy Rodriguez walked over to Lisa and pointed at the screen in front of them. Amy had short black hair and was missing her left arm, which had been replaced with a metal one that worked even better than a real arm. She had lost her real arm in an accident years ago, but never let it slow her down. The screen showed a large space station floating in the darkness. It looked very old, and was made of materials that humans had never seen before. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue light, while other sections looked damaged from many years of fighting. The station was huge, maybe 10 times bigger than their ship. Amy spoke in a serious voice. The station is not responding to our messages, but our sensors show there are living beings inside. The readings are strange, though. It looks like there are 2 very different types of life forms, and they seem to be fighting each other. Lisa nodded and studied the data on her tablet. The numbers showed that one group of aliens had very high energy readings, while the other group gave off different signals entirely. Both groups seemed to be intelligent based on the technology they were using. Marcus Webb joined them at the window. Marcus was the team expert on alien cultures. Even though he had never actually met any aliens before, he was a tall, thin man with gray hair who spent most of his time reading old books about how different human societies had learned to get along. Marcus pointed at the station and said the damage patterns suggest this conflict has been going on for a very long time, maybe hundreds of years. The weapons marks on the hull show both energy attacks and physical damage. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She turned to Amy and said, "We need to go over there and try to help them stop fighting. If we can bring peace between these aliens, it will show that humans can be useful friends in this part of space." Amy looked worried. "Lisa, that station is a war zone. Our ship has good shields and weapons, but we do not know what kind of technology these aliens have. They might see us as enemies." To Lisa understood the danger, but she also knew this was why they had come so far from Earth. Humanity had always been good at solving problems and making peace between groups that did not like each other. She believed they could do the same thing here. The team spent the next few hours preparing for the mission. Engineer Kate Sullivan made sure their translation computers were working properly. Kate was young and very smart with red hair and freckles. She had built most of the special equipment they needed for talking to aliens. Kate explained how the translation system worked. The computers will listen to alien speech and try to figure out what the words mean. It might take a few minutes, but once the system learns their language, we should be able to talk to them. Lisa put on her special suit that would protect her in the alien environment. The suit was white, with blue stripes and had a clear helmet. She checked all the equipment one more time. Her scanner, her medical kit, and most importantly, a small mirror that she always carried for studying how aliens reacted to seeing themselves. The shuttle that would take them to the station was small, but fast. Amy would pilot it, while Lisa, Marcus, and Kate rode as passengers to soldiers named Ben, Clark, and Maria. Santos would come along to keep them safe if things went wrong. As they flew toward the huge station, Lisa felt both excited and nervous. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for so long. First real contact with alien intelligence. But she could see the damage on the station walls, and knew that these aliens had been hurting each other for a very long time. The station had docking ports that looked like they were built for ships, much different from human ones. but Kate had modified their shuttle so it could connect safely. When they docked, Lisa heard strange sounds coming from inside the station. Deep growling noises mixed with high musical tones. Zamie checked her weapon and looked at Lisa. "Are you ready for this? We have no idea what we are walking in." Lisa took a deep breath and nodded. She had spent years preparing for this moment, studying alien psychology and learning how to communicate with beings that might think very differently from humans. Now, it was time to put all that training to use. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the alien station. The gravity was a little lighter. Then earth and the air smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. The walls were covered with symbols that glowed softly and changed colors as they watched. Almost immediately they heard footsteps coming toward them. Two very different groups of aliens appeared from opposite directions. Lisa got her first look at the beings that would change human understanding of the universe forever. One group looked almost like the elves from old Earth stories. They were tall and graceful with skin that seemed to be made of blue crystal. Their hair was silver and moved as if it was underwater. Their eyes were large and seemed to glow with inner light. The other group was completely different. They looked like giant lizards walking on two legs. Their skin was dark green and covered with natural armor that looked harder than steel. Their hands ended in long, sharp claws, and their teeth were pointed like knives. Both groups stopped when they saw the humans. Lisa could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. She knew that the next few minutes would decide whether humanity would make new friends or new enemies. The elf-like aliens spoke first, and their voices sounded like music. The translation computer worked quickly, and soon Lisa could understand their words. "We are the Veil 3. Welcome strange visitors to our ancient home. I am Silas Moonwhisper, leader of my people." The lizard aliens made deeper sounds that reminded Lisa of thunder. The computer translated their words to "We are the Crovar, and this is our station, as much as theirs. I am War Chief Zek Thul, and I want to know why soft-skinned mammals dare to come here." Lisa stepped forward, even though both alien groups were much bigger and stronger than any human. She had learned that showing fear was often the worst thing you could do when meeting new people. She spoke clearly so the translation computer could send her words to both groups. "I am Dr. Lisa Morgan from the planet Earth. We came here hoping to meet new friends and maybe help solve the problems between your peoples." Both alien leaders looked surprised that such small, weak-looking creatures would offer to help with their ancient war, but Lisa could see something else in their eyes: curiosity about these strange new visitors who had traveled so far just to try to make peace. The meeting room on the alien station was enormous, with the ceiling so high that Lisa could barely see the top. The walls were covered with murals showing the history of both alien races. Some pictures showed peaceful times when the Veil 3 and Crovar had worked together. Others showed terrible battles with explosions and destruction everywhere. Lisa sat at a large table made from some kind of glowing stone. The Veil 3 had built chairs that looked like they were grown from living crystal, while the Crovar preferred simple metal seats that could support their heavy armored bodies. For 3 days Lisa and her team had been trying to get the two alien races to talk about peace instead of war, but every conversation ended the same way. The Veil 3 would speak in their musical voices about honor and ancient traditions, while the Crovar would growl about strength and the need to prove who was strongest. Dr. Marcus Webb had filled dozens of pages with notes about both cultures. The Veil 3 seemed to believe that intelligence and beauty were the most important things in life. They had created amazing art and music, and their technology could do things that seemed like magic to humanize them. Crovar were completely different. They respected only physical power and the ability to win fights. Their weapons were simple but deadly, and they had built their whole society around the idea that the strongest should rule. Everyone else wore. Chief Zek Thul was the biggest Crovar that Lisa had ever seen. He was almost 9 feet tall, and his armor plating was scarred from hundreds of battles. His claws were longer than Lisa's fingers and looked sharp enough to cut through steel. His eyes were yellow and seemed to glow in the dim light. Silas Moonwhisper was the opposite of the Crovar leader. He was tall and thin, like all Veil 3, but he moved with a grace that made him seem to float rather than walk. His crystal blue skin changed colors slightly, depending on his emotions, and his silver hair seemed to have a life of its own. The peace talks were not going well. Lisa had tried everything she could think of. She had shown both sides how much they could gain by working together instead of fighting. She had explained how humans had learned to solve their own wars through compromise and understanding, but neither side wanted to listen. The Veil 3 thought they were superior because of their advanced technology and telepathic abilities. The Crovar believed they deserved to rule because they were stronger and better fighters. On the fourth day, everything went wrong. Lisa was presenting her final peace proposal when Zekthul suddenly stood up. His massive form cast a shadow over the entire table, and his claws scraped against the metal of his chair. The sound was like fingernails on a chalkboard. The war chief voice was deep and angry when he spoke. Enough of this foolishness. Little mammal, you waste our time with your weak words about peace. The Crovar do not need lessons from creatures who have no natural weapons. He took a step toward Lisa, and she could smell his breath, which reminded her of sulfur and old meat. His yellow eyes stared down at her, and she could see her reflection in them. You humans think you understand conflict, but you know nothing. Your species has no claws, no armor, no strength at all. You are prey animals, pretending to be predators. The other Crovar in the room made sounds of agreement. Their claws clicked against the floor as they shifted in their seats. The Veil 3 watched with interest but did not move to help. They seemed curious to see what would happen. Captain Amy Rodriguez started to reach for her weapon, but Zekthul was faster than anything that big should have been. Able to move, he crossed the room in 2 quick steps and grabbed Lisa by the shoulders, lifting her out of her chair. His claws extended to their full length, and he held them just inches from her throat. Lisa could feel the sharp points pressing against the fabric of her suit. She knew that one quick movement would be enough to end her life. You speak of peace, little human, but what do you know of war? Your people have never faced real enemies. You have never had to fight for survival like we have. The Crovar have been warriors for 1,000 generations. Lisa felt her heart beating fast, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had been in dangerous situations before, and she knew that panic would only make things worse. Amy and the other humans were too far away to help, and the Veil 3 were not going to interfere. Look at these claws, Zekthul continued. Each one is harder than your strongest metal. They can cut through armor and bone, like your people cut through soft fruit. I was born with weapons that could destroy any human. The war chief pressed his claws a little closer to Lisa's throat. She could feel the sharp points through her suit, and knew that she was only seconds away from death. But instead of being afraid, she found herself thinking about something her grandmother had told her years ago. Her grandmother had been a teacher who worked with difficult children. She had always said that bullies were usually afraid of something, and that the best way to deal with them was to make them look at themselves honestly. Lisa slowly reached into her belt pouch, moving very carefully, so that Zekthul would not think she was trying to grab a weapon. She pulled out a small mirror that she always carried as part of her scientific equipment. The mirror was only about 4 inches across, but it was made of the best materials Earth could produce. It could show a perfect reflection, even in low light, and Lisa had used it many times to study how different creatures reacted to seeing themselves without breaking eye contact with the Crovar war chief. Lisa raised the mirror and held it in front of his face. She could see his reflection clearly, his scarred armor, his yellow eyes, and his extended claws. Try again, she said, quietly. Words were simple, but they seemed to hit Zekthul like a physical blow. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, and for the first time since Lisa had met him, the war chief looked uncertain. The room became completely silent. The other Crovar stopped making noise, and even the Veil 3 leaned forward to see what was happening. Silas Moon whisper. Eyes began to glow brighter as he used his telepathic abilities to sense the emotions in the room. Lisa kept the mirror steady, even though her hands wanted to shake. She looked directly into Zekthul, yellow eyes, and spoke in a calm, clear voice. What do you see, War Chief? Do you see a mighty warrior? Or do you see someone who is afraid that words might be more powerful than claws? Thule stared at his reflection for a long moment. His claws were still extended, and still dangerous, but something had changed in his expression. The anger was still there, but now there was something else too. Confusion, and maybe even a little bit of fear. The war chief had expected the human to beg for her life, or try to fight back. He had not expected her to show him his own face, and ask him what he saw. The simple mirror had done something that no weapon could do. It had made him think about himself. Dr. Marcus Webb watched from across the room and realized that he was seeing something that would be talked about for generations. A small human woman with nothing but a mirror was facing down a 9-foot-tall alien warrior, and somehow she was winning. The other humans held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Amy had her hand on her weapon, but she knew that if Thule decided to attack, there would be nothing she could do. Lisa was completely at the mercy of the alien war chief, but the Crovar leader did not attack. Instead, he continued to stare at his reflection in the mirror. As he looked, Lisa could see something changing in his eyes. The rage was slowly being replaced by something else. Something that might have been curiosity. What game is this? Human Thule asked, but his voice was quieter now, less threatening than before. What trick do you play with this small shiny thing? Lisa kept the mirror steady and replied, It is not a trick, War Chief. It is truth. The mirror shows only what is really there, nothing more and nothing less. She paused and then continued. What you see in that reflection is up to you. You can see a warrior who uses fear to get his way. Or you can see someone who is strong enough to listen to new ideas. The choice is yours. The standoff continued, with Lisa holding the mirror, and Thule staring at his own reflection. The fate of the peace talks, and maybe the future of all three species, hung in the balance, waiting to see what the war chief would decide to do next. Thule continued to stare at his reflection in the small mirror that Lisa held between them. The war chief had never really looked at himself this way before. Crovar did not usually spend time thinking about their appearance. They cared only about being strong and winning fights, but now, as he looked at his own face, Thule began to notice things he had never seen. The scars that covered his armor told stories of battles he had fought over the years. Some were small cuts from training exercises when he was young, others were deep marks from real combat against Veil 3 weapons. His yellow eyes looked tired even though he tried to keep them fierce and threatening. The constant fighting had worn him down more than he wanted to admit. Every day brought new conflicts, and every victory seemed to lead to more problems instead of solving them. Lisa watched the war chief carefully and saw the change happening in his expression. She had studied alien psychology for years and knew that this was a critical moment. If she said the wrong thing now, Thule might become angry again and hurt her. But if she could help him understand what he was really seeing, the mirror might save all of them. She spoke softly, keeping her voice calm and steady. You see those claws, War Chief? They are impressive. Built by nature for tearing and cutting, designed for a world where only the strongest could survive. Thule looked at his extended claws in the mirror. They were indeed fearsome weapons. Each one was 4 inches long and harder than the best human steel. They had served him well in countless battles, and had made other Crovar respect and fear him. But look closer, Lisa continued. Look at what is behind those claws. Look at the scars on your armor. Each one tells a story of violence that solved nothing. Your people have been fighting the Veil 3 for 300 years. What has all that fighting accomplished? The war chief thought about her words and realized she was right. The war between Crovar and Veil 3 had been going on since before he was born. His grandfather had fought in this conflict, and his grandfather had fought 2 generations of Crovar, had lived and died in this endless struggle. Their home planet was dying because they spent all their resources on weapons instead of fixing their environment. Their population was getting smaller because so many young Crovar died in battle before they could have children. The space station was falling apart because they were too busy fighting to maintain it properly. Shifted the mirror slightly so that Thule could see more of his face. "Now look at me," she said. "No claws, no armor, no telepathic powers like the Veil 3, just a human with a mirror, and yet, here I stand, unafraid. Do you know why?" The question surprised Zekthol. He had assumed that all humans were cowards because they looked so weak and fragile. But this small female was standing right in front of him even though his claws were still extended. She should have been terrified, but her voice was steady and her hands did not shake. Scylla's Moonwhisper had been watching the exchange with growing interest. The Veil 3 leader had telepathic abilities that let him sense the emotions of others. He could feel the confusion and uncertainty growing in Zekthol's mind. The war chief was beginning to question things he had never questioned before. The other aliens in the room were also paying close attention. The Krovar warriors looked puzzled because they had never seen their leader hesitate like this. The Veil 3 seemed fascinated by this new development in the piece. Dr. Marcus Webb was taking notes as fast as he could write. He realized that he was witnessing something extraordinary. A human was using simple psychology to reach an alien mind that had been shaped by completely different experiences. This would change how humans approached first contact situations forever. Captain Amy Rodriguez kept her hand near her weapon, but she was beginning to understand Lisa's strategy. Instead of trying to match the alien strength for strength, Lisa was using human intelligence and insight to find a different solution. She was fighting a battle of minds instead of bodies. Continued speaking to Zekthol while keeping the mirror steady, because humans learned something that your species has not discovered yet. The strongest weapon is not the one you are born with, it is the one you choose to build. She paused to let her words sink in before continuing. We had claws once, not real ones like yours, but we had our own version of them. We were tribal and territorial. We believed that might made right. We thought the strongest should rule over the weakest. The war chief looked confused. How can you say humans had claws? You have no natural weapons at all. Your species is obviously designed to be prey, not predators. Lisa smiled slightly and said, "You are right, that we have no physical claws, but we had something just as dangerous. We had hatred for anyone who was different from us. We divided ourselves into groups and fought endless wars. We nearly destroyed our own planet several times." She gestured toward her team members, Amy with her prosthetic arm, Dr. Marcus, whose ancestors came from different continents, Engineer Kate, whose grandparents had once been enemies in ancient conflicts. "Look at my team," she said. "These people come from families that once fought each other. Their ancestors were enemies who killed each other over land and resources and ideas. But we learned to work together instead of fighting." Zek Full studied the human team more carefully and began to see what Lisa meant. They did come from different backgrounds, and yet they clearly trusted each other with their lives. Amy would die to protect Lisa even though they looked different from each other. Marcus and Kate worked together perfectly even though their families might have been enemies in the past. We turned our weapons on each other for thousands of years, Lisa continued. We built bigger and more terrible weapons until we could have destroyed all life on Earth. But each time we came close to destroying ourselves, we chose to build bridges instead of walls. The war chief was beginning to understand. "Not because you were naturally peaceful," he said slowly, "but because you learned that survival meant more than just being strong." Lisa nodded. "Yes, exactly. We learned that being the strongest does not matter if you destroy everything worth protecting. We learned that real strength comes from knowing when not to fight." She moved the mirror again so that Zekthol could see his scarred face clearly. "The mirror does not lie, War Chief. It shows you what you are, but more importantly, it can show you what you could choose to become." Zekthol looked at his reflection one more time and saw something different. Now, instead of just seeing a warrior, he saw a leader who could make choices, a person who could decide whether to keep fighting the same old battles or try something new. His claws slowly retracted back into their sheaths. The immediate threat was over, but the real work was just beginning. Lisa had opened a door in the war chief mind, but it would take more than one conversation to change hundreds of years of thinking. Zilla's Moonwhisper rose from his crystal chair and approached them. The Veil 3 leader had been listening to everything, and his telepathic senses told him that something important had just happened. Human Lisa, he said in his musical voice, you have done something remarkable. You have made a Crovar question his own beliefs. This has not happened in living memory. Lisa turned to face the Veil 3 leader, while still keeping an eye on Zek though. The mirror works for everyone. Silas, would you like to see what it shows? Youth's suggestion surprised everyone in the room. Even the Veil 3 had never been challenged to look at themselves this honestly, but Silas was curious about these strange humans and their unusual methods. Very well, he said, I will look in your mirror. But I warn you that Veil 3 minds are more complex than Crovar thoughts. You may not like what you find. Lisa held up the mirror so that Silas could see his reflection. The Veil 3 leader looked at his crystal blue skin and silver hair and his large glowing eyes. For a moment he seemed satisfied with what he saw, but then Lisa spoke again. What do you see, Silas? Do you see someone who is wise and beautiful, or do you see someone who thinks he is better than others because of the way he was born? The question hit the Veil 3 leader like a physical blow. He had always taken pride in his people's advanced culture and natural telepathic abilities. He had assumed that this made them superior to the more primitive Crovar bat. Now as he looked in the mirror, he began to wonder if his pride was really just another kind of weakness. Lisa stepped back from both alien leaders and lowered the mirror, but she kept her eyes focused on them. The moment was critical because both Zek, Thal, and Silas were thinking about things they had never questioned before. She needed to help them understand what they had just learned about themselves. The meeting room had become completely quiet. Even the soft humming sounds that the station made seemed to have stopped. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. The other Crovar and Veil 3 were watching their leaders with surprise because neither had ever shown uncertainty like this before. Lisa knew that this was her chance to explain something that might change the future for all three species. She had spent years studying how different groups learned to work together, and she understood that the most important step was helping people see past their old assumptions. You want to know what makes humans dangerous, she said, addressing both alien groups. We are the only species we have met so far that had to evolve past our own nature just to survive. Marcus Webb realized that Lisa was about to share some of the most important ideas in human history. The story of how humanity had learned to overcome its own violent instincts was not something they had planned to reveal, but the situation called for complete honesty. Lisa continued, we had claws once, not physical ones like yours, Warchief, but mental and emotional claws. We were tribal creatures who feared and hated anyone who was different from us. We fought wars over skin color and religion, and which piece of land belonged to which group. She gestured toward her team members who were listening with fascination as she told their species' greatest story. Look at my crew. Amy comes from a family whose ancestors fought against people who looked like Marcus. Her great-grandmother lived through wars where millions of people died just because they had different beliefs. Captain Amy Rodriguez nodded and added, my family came from Mexico, while Marcus' ancestors came from Africa and Europe 200 years ago. Our people might have been enemies, but we learned that our differences made us stronger instead of weaker. Engineer Kate Sullivan spoke. Up to my grandparents were from Ireland and England, countries that fought each other for hundreds of years. But I grew up playing with children whose families came from everywhere on Earth. We learned that the old hatreds were stupid and pointless. Thal was listening carefully to every word. The idea that humans had once been as violent as Crovar was hard to believe because they looked so peaceful and weak. But the way they talked about their history sounded honest and painful. We turned our weapons on each other for thousands of years, Lisa continued. We built tools that could kill millions of people at once. We poisoned our own air and water. We nearly made our planet uninhabitable because we could not stop fighting long enough to take care of our home. Silas Moon Whisper used his telepathic abilities to sense the emotions behind Lisa's words. He could feel the genuine sadness and regret that all humans carried about their violent past. These creatures were telling the truth about their history. But each time we almost destroyed ourselves, Lisa said. We chose to step back from the edge. We learned that our greatest enemy was not some outside threat. It was our own inability to see past our fears and prejudices. She pointed to the damaged walls of the space station. You two species have been fighting for 300 years. What has it accomplished? Your home worlds are dying, your populations are shrinking, your children are born into war instead of peace. The war chief looked around the room and really saw the destruction for the first time. The beautiful murals were cracked and faded. The advanced technology was breaking down because no one had time to maintain it. The station that should have been a symbol of cooperation had become a fortress of endless conflict. People are dying out, Lisa continued, and it is not because of each other. It is because you have forgotten how to live for something, instead of just fighting against something. She walked over to one of the damaged murals that showed Crovar and Veil3 working together in ancient times. This artwork shows that your species once cooperated. You built this station together. You shared knowledge and resources. You were stronger together than you ever were. Apart, Silas looked at the mural with new eyes. He had seen it thousands of times, but had never really thought about what it meant. His people had taught him that the Crovar were naturally violent and could never be trusted, but the artwork clearly showed a time when both species had lived in peace. What changed? Lisa asked. Why did you stop working together and start trying to destroy each other? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Both alien leaders knew the official histories of their peoples, but now they were being asked to think about those stories in a new ways. Ekthul spoke first, but his voice was quieter than usual. The Crovar were told that the Veil3 became arrogant. They thought they were better than us because of their mental powers. They stopped treating us as equal. Silas bristled at the accusation, but then caught himself. He looked in the mirror that Lisa still held and saw his own proud expression. We were told that the Crovar became jealous of our achievements. They started using violence to take what they could not create themselves. Lisa nodded. Both stories might be true, but they are only part of the truth. Fear made you both see the worst in each other. Instead of the best, you stopped talking and started fighting. You forgot that you were stronger together. She moved to the center of the room, where everyone could see her clearly. The mirror does not lie to anyone. It shows Crovar that strength without wisdom leads to endless war. It shows Veil3 that intelligence without compassion leads to isolation. Dr. Marcus Webb added his own observations. I have studied the histories of both your peoples. The evidence shows that you accomplished amazing things when you worked together. You explored new star systems. You developed technologies that neither species could have created. Alone, you were building a civilization that could have lasted forever, but when you started fighting, Lisa continued, you stopped growing, you stopped learning, you stopped becoming better than you were. The war became more important than the reasons you were fighting. Engineer Kate Sullivan had been analyzing the station systems, and she spoke up. The technology here is incredible, but it is centuries old. You have been so busy fighting that you have not invented anything new in generations. Your equipment is failing, and you do not have the knowledge to fix it anymore. The words hit both alien leaders like physical blows. They had been so focused on their ancient conflict that they had not noticed how much they were losing. The constant fighting had consumed all their resources and attention. Lisa raised the mirror again and held it so that both Zekthul and Silas could see their reflections together. This is what you could choose to become, she said. Partners instead of enemies, teachers instead of warriors, builders instead of destroyers. The two leaders looked at their reflections side by side, and for the first time in centuries, they saw themselves as part of something larger than their individual species. They saw the possibility of a future that did not have to be defined by the mistakes of the past. Humans learned that survival is not about being the strongest or the smartest, Lisa said. It is about being wise enough to know when your enemy could become your friend. It is about being brave enough to choose cooperation over conquest. Zaroom remained silent as everyone absorbed what they had heard. The mirror had shown them more than just their faces. It had shown them the truth about themselves and the choices they could make. Both alien leaders were thinking about the same question. Could they be brave enough to choose a different path, or would they keep following the same destructive road that had brought them to the edge of extinction. 3 months had passed since that day in the meeting room when Lisa had held up a simple mirror and changed the course of history. The space station that had once been a battlefield was now buzzing with activity as Crovar and Vale 3 worked side by side on the most ambitious project either species had ever attempted. Lisa stood at the observation deck, watching the final preparations for the launch. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. A massive colony ship floated in space near the station, and it had been built by both alien species working together. The ship was a beautiful combination of Crovar engineering and Vale 3 artistry. The hull was made from Crovar metal that was stronger than anything humans had ever seen, but it was shaped with the flowing curves that Vale 3 artists preferred. The engines used Vale 3 energy technology, but they were built with Crovar manufacturing techniques that made them more reliable. Dr. Marcus Webb joined Lisa at the window and shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago these two species were trying to kill each other. Now they are preparing to colonize a new world together. It is the most incredible transformation I have ever witnessed. Captain Amy Rodriguez was also watching the preparations. Her mechanical arm was busy adjusting the controls that would help coordinate the launch. The cooperation between the species had been so successful that they had asked the humans to help with the technical aspects of their mission. Engineer Kate Sullivan had spent weeks working with both Crovar and Vale 3 scientists to design the colony ship systems. She had learned more about alien technology in 3 months than human scientists had discovered in decades of theoretical research. The aliens had been amazingly generous with sharing their knowledge. The colony ship was not just a technological marvel. It represented something much more important. It was proof that ancient enemies could become partners if they were willing to look at themselves honestly and choose a different path. War Chief Zektho approached the observation deck, but he looked very different from the threatening figure who had once held claws to Lisa's throat. He still wore his traditional armor, but now it was decorated with Vale 3 crystal designs that showed his new role as a peacemaker. The Crovar had given him a new title that had never existed before. He was now called Peacebringer Zekthul, and his job was to help solve conflicts instead of starting them. The change had not been easy for him, but he had discovered that building things was more satisfying than destroying them. Your mirror trick, he said to Lisa in a voice that was thoughtful instead of threatening. It was not magic. After all, Lisa smiled and replied, "No, War Chief, it was not magic, just physics. Light reflecting truth back at itself, but sometimes the simplest things can have the most powerful effects." And the truth was Zekthul. Asklisa looked out at the colony ship where Crovar and Vale 3 were working together to load supplies and equipment. That being afraid of what you see in the mirror means you already know you can change it. You saw a warrior who was tired of fighting. You chose to become a leader who builds peace. Instead, Scylla's moon whisper joined them at the window. The Vale 3 leader had also changed over the past 3 months. His telepathic abilities had grown stronger, and he could now communicate with Crovar minds, as well as his own people. The mental connection between the species had made cooperation much easier. Your species has given us something we thought we had lost forever, the Vale 3 leader said to Lisa. Hope that intelligence can triumph over instinct. Hope that we can choose to become better than what we were born to. Beatty colony ship was almost ready to launch. It would carry 5,000 colonists from both species to a planet in a nearby star system. The world had been chosen because it had the right conditions for both Crovar and Vale 3 to thrive together. Lisa had helped them plan the colony, and she was amazed at how well the two species complemented each other. The Crovar were excellent at building things and solving practical problems. The Vale 3 were gifted at art and science and understanding complex systems together. They could create a civilization that would be stronger and more beautiful than either species could achieve alone. The colony would be a living example of what cooperation could accomplish. Marcus Webb had been documenting everything for the historical record. The story of how a simple mirror had ended a 300-year war would be studied by diplomats and peacemakers for generations too. As they watched a small shuttle left the colony ship and flew toward their observation deck, Lisa recognized the pilot as one of the young Krovar who had volunteered to join the colony mission. His name was Thekral, and he had been born during the war but was choosing to live his life in peace. The shuttle docked and Thekral came to the observation deck. He was carrying something in his hands, and when he reached Lisa, he held it out to her. It was a mirror, but not like the simple one she had used in the meeting room. This mirror was a work of art. The frame was made from Krovar metal, but it was decorated with Veil 3 crystals that made it glow with soft rainbow colors. The reflecting surface was polished to perfection and showed images with incredible clarity. "This is for you, Dr. Lisa Morgan Vec," Ral said. "We made it together. Krovar and Veil 3 working as one team, so that you will always remember what you taught us about seeing ourselves clearly." Lisa accepted the gift with tears in her eyes. She had never expected anything like this. The mirror was beautiful, but it was also a symbol of how much both species had changed. Captain Amy Rodriguez activated the communication system so they could hear the final countdown to the colony ship launch. The voices they heard were speaking in both Krovar and Veil 3 languages, as the two species coordinated their departure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 launch. The colony ship engines ignited with a brilliant flash of light. The massive vessel began to move slowly at first, but then faster and faster, until it was racing toward the distant stars. Lisa watched until it disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its precious cargo of hope. Engineer Kate Sullivan wiped away a tear and said, "They are going to make it work. You know that, right? Those two species are going to build something amazing together." Lisa nodded and held up the mirror that Thekral had given her. In its surface, she could see the reflection of all the humans and aliens who had gathered to watch the launch. They looked different from each other, but they were all working toward the same goal. The strongest claws were no match for a simple mirror, and the courage to use it, she said quietly. "Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one that shows us who we really are and who we could choose to become." As the observation deck emptied, Lisa remained at the window, looking out at the stars. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her that bullies were usually afraid of something. The lesson had been true for human children, and it had been true for alien warriors. The mirror in her hands caught the starlight and through rainbow patterns on the walls. Lisa realized that she was holding more than just a gift. She was holding proof that understanding and compassion could triumph over fear and hatred. Somewhere in the distance, the colony ship was racing toward a new world where ancient enemies would become permanent partners. The future was bright with possibilities, and it had all started with a simple question: what do you see when you look in the mirror? The answer had changed everything.